Andrea, it's so great to, first of all, to see you. I haven't seen you in forever.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited.
Yeah, yeah. So before we get things rolling, for those who haven't heard what you do or don't know what you do, could you describe your presence in the arts industry?
Sure. So, right now, I am a student artist or an artist scholar, as is my
Ooh.
official label. I'm a Doctor of Musical Arts student at Western University, and that means that I am going through the formal education of trying to become a doctor while alongside um, becoming a professional artist. And I'm an opera singer, so my medium is voice, and yeah, artist scholar for the foreseeable future.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah. What do you I'm not sure what are you doing your doctorate in? Could you like describe it sort of because I know I remember, so we went to university together, and I remember in our first year history class, our professor Patricia Debley was saying the more school you do, the further you go in school, you learn more and more about less and less.
Yeah.
So what what are you sort of focusing on right now?
I totally forgot she said that, but that's so true. So my focus is new Canadian opera. Um, the uh, the person that I'm sort of drafting my thesis around is composer Ana Sakalovic, who is a Serbian Canadian composer, and she is sort of the biggest Canadian opera composer, a woman opera composer, but even like woman or man, she's sort of the biggest um, opera composer in the country right now, and she is writing all sorts of new stuff, even commissioned by the Canadian Opera Company, which is huge. And she's from Serbia, so a lot of her music is Serbian influenced. Lots of like Serbian scales, rhythmic devices, and stuff are inserted into her music. So my focus is how um, that identity is uh, woven into her compositions from sort of a Canadian lens as well, and seeing how um, her music contributes to the Canadian like multicultural identity and the cultural mosaic of Canadian music. So yeah, my focus is new music.
Cool.
Yeah.
So how does like, like, is there something about Serbian music that sort of drew you to her, or was it because she's Canadian, or what sort of drew you to her?
Yeah, so that it's kind of uh, wonky that I even came to her because I don't have any cultural ties to Serbia. My family is not Serbian or Southeastern European at all, and I really don't know much Southeastern European music. So while I was in my master's, I had this amazing prof, Dr. John Hess, who has just left us, and he's retired and he's off living in Ireland, and he's amazing, and we all miss him. But he sort of pointed me in the direction of her music, their colleagues, and he commissions her to write a whole bunch of things.
Hmm.
Um, but he always made his students aware of her music, and a lot of the song assignments that we would get was her music. So I sort of got really interested in what she was writing and how she was writing, and it really seemed like her music fit my voice.
Hmm.
Um, so I was sort of just intrigued by this. And then when it came to sort of figuring out what my angle would be in the doctoral degree, um, I came to John and I was like, can you help me sort of figure it out? I kind of want to do something in the realm of Canadian opera, and I my original idea was to kind of canvas like Canadian women composers in opera because that's a field that really needs to uh, be highlighted. uh,
Hmm.
it's really underrepresented in the research, but he sort of said to me, well, instead of doing this canvas, like why don't you just focus on one? And I was like, well, Ana Sakalovic is someone that I'm kind of familiar with and I really like her music, so that's how I got sort of turned on to her.
Yeah. So um I'm sort of jumping around here with my questions, but You know, there always seems to be like a tight knit subculture of artists. You know, if you look closely enough, you'll find that. And I think like especially in like in academia too. Um, but like how like what's your like arts community like?
So at first, well, I kind of have two sort of communities in my mind at the same place at Western. Um, so during my master's, it was very tight knit, very close. All of the singers were really good friends, and we'd perform on each other's recitals and like that kind of thing. But as I moved into the doctoral degree, it is so lonely. And especially during the pandemic, like we can't see anyone. You go into school and you like sit in a practice room for like an hour and then you leave, and there's no classes online. So, sorry, in person. So, like beyond my lesson. So it's just been a really like lonely community, particularly this year. But I think pandemic aside, it's just been a little bit lonelier for me as, we're really supposed to be individual academics right now. So I feel the support of my teachers largely. They're amazing. The support of my colleagues is still there. I have a lot of pianist friends, collaborative pianist friends who um, ask me to perform on their recitals. I've had a couple different collaborations this year, so that's been really nice. But really, my community is within the academic environment and within the school. But it's always fun to come home here to Niagara, to Thorold, because the things that I do at home are much different than the things that I do in London. I'm when I'm here, I do just like more fun projects. Like I used to have a little duo that me and my friend Matt Becia used to
Yep.
do together. We would sing and play guitar at cafes. So that kind of stuff is the stuff that I sort of do here, and not so much in public anymore. It's more just getting together to jam. But jamming is what I do here, and I love jamming.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so like what about I want to touch on what you were saying about collaboration because um I guess in my experience in the sort of classical realm of music, um it was difficult as a soloist
Mhm.
to do much collaboration, right? And as you know, as a vocalist, I mean, it could be largely solo as well, but that's interesting to hear that you collaborate a lot. So what's that like to collaborate with your friends and colleagues?
Yeah. Oh, it's so amazing. Um, I'm really lucky as a vocalist at Western, particularly because there's a really large program for collaborative piano, and obviously,
Okay.
yeah, like you can do solo piano performance at Western, or you can do collaborative piano. You can
It
get
almost
both.
seems like an oxymoron.
It really does. Yeah, it's I just for me it's a no brainer. Like the money is in collaborative piano. I have to say, like there's always going to be a singer who needs you, or a violinist, or a flute player, or whatever. Like so that program there at Western is thriving, and a lot of times like our classes are structured around the collaborative pianists and the vocalists to work together, so we're supposed to collaborate anyway. But outside of classes is what I've been doing most of my collaborating uh, around this year. um, so I have a friend, Brian Cho. I sang on his recital, and we performed Schubert's "Shepherd on the Rock," which is a piece for piano, voice, and clarinet. And that was Sammy Johnson, the amazing clarinetist, and that was amazing. It's so great to you feel like you're like really collaborating. I think when you're with your friends and
Mm.
just with fellow students. It's kind of a different feeling when you're collaborating with a coach, a pianist coach, because they become your friend as well if you work with them long enough. But I feel like that environment is just very much like I'm the student and you're the pianist. And as much as we're supposed to work together as a team, and I'm a singer, and I'm supposed to be, largely in charge of what goes on. There's still a little bit of that sort of student teacher feeling. So collaborating with Brian and Sammy just felt like we had total equal say on tempi and breaths. So it just felt really fun. And I had another collaboration experience with my friend Magaria Halim. We did Kaya Sarayo's Quatre Instants, which is just a piece for voice and piano, but that's a bit of new music. She's a Finnish composer, but she composes a bunch in the French language. And we worked all year on just these 4 songs. It's like a 25-minute cycle, and it's so hard, but it was amazing. Like, just I feel like doing that with a friend, it like really disarms you, and just you really just have the sense of teamwork. I know I've said it over and over, but
Yeah.
it's a cool relationship when you collaborate with friends.
Mhm. So, do you still do much performance now, like during your doctorate?
Yeah, I perform probably more than I ever have, uh,
Okay.
which is nutty. Like, it's absolutely nuts. But I'm at the point now in my doctorate, so I've just finished my second year, and it's a 4-year program. So I've just completed my comprehensive exams, which hopefully I've passed, which means I'm a candidate, and that means that my coursework is over. So I no longer have to take classes, which is kind of really nice, but terrifying because I'm now supposed to dedicate the next 2 years to researching and writing my doctoral monograph. So that's going to be very daunting. But in this time, like, I feel more free to take on more performance projects
Mm.
with my peers around the school, and just like outside in the community in London. There's a few opera companies that I've applied to for next year, so I'm hoping to just really take the opportunity, like while I have free time from coursework, to kind of get out there and perform a little bit more outside of London too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what makes you feel isolated from the community then?
Um, I think just because I'm so busy, like
Mm.
it's, I'm not sure if I'll feel this way uh, like next year or within the next couple of years, just because I will have that time freed up. Um, but I don't want to speak too soon because all the doctoral friends I've ever talked to have absolutely said, like, you think you're going to be less busy, but you're just absolutely not. So I, I don't know what it's going to look like, but in the in my last 2 years of the doctorate, I have just been so busy. I've barely seen friends. I have an amazing roommate who I come to with my tears and, and everything, but, and my woes. Um, but yeah, it's just such a busy degree. Like, I never ever could have imagined it. I mean, I did my master's at Western too, so I figured I had a grip on what to expect for the doctorate, but it was just absolutely not what I expected. I had such a harder time uh acclimating and just getting used to what was going on in the doctorate. So yeah, it's been very busy.
I bet. Yeah.
Yeah. I've lost a lot of sleep.
um, so I remember when we were doing our undergrad together. You lent me a book with a lot of it was like a lot of Canadian visual art
Yeah.
in there. I can't remember who the artist was.
Right.
Do you remember that book that you lent me?
Yes. It's not behind me, but I think it's Loren Harris, Group of
That
Seven.
sounds right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, do you find that like other disciplines of art influence what you do?
Yes. Very much so. Um, I'd probably say that it comes down to like choosing my repertoire that I'm gonna sing is where that sort of has the most effect. Um, because uh, I get I get really involved in like the poetry And sorry, I don't know if my computer's making so many noises. But I get really involved in the poetry, and if I don't like a poem, and if I don't immediately understand a poem or like it at all, then I'm just not going to pick that particular piece.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I think poetry and music, that seems like the obvious answer for singers, but what really jumps out at me too, about poetry and music is like the title of a song. And I brought this up in my contemporary music course that I took last semester with Omar Daniel. And this class was made up of like some composition students and some performance students of any discipline, like violin or piano or singing. And the question came of what makes a singer choose a song. And it seems kind of dumb, but to me, like the title of a song that like will have a huge effect on whether or not I want to sing it. Um,
Hmm.
and the composition students had said, like, I never really thought about the title of a work. Like a lot of them will say like, string trio number 84 or like opus
Right.
whatever. I'm like, that doesn't help me. I want it to be called La Mer or like, something about water. Like it just, so if it's got a good poem, like if it's got good text and you give it a good title, that's really gonna affect whether or not I want to sing it.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, because I mean, then you connect with the text, right? Where like if you're playing strictly instrumental music with no text, it's like, well, I don't know, hopefully the melody tells the story, right? But
Yeah.
um yeah, no, that makes sense. Um do you engage in any other arts practices?
I do write poetry. And I joke that like my poetry writing happens quarterly because I just in a year I get this absolute like burst of creativity and I feel like I just need to write. I've always kind of been like that. Like I've always written things. I have like novels stored away that will never see the light of day ever. But poetry I do love to write, and it's not an everyday thing for me. But I had the idea of um, commissioning one of my composition friends to like write a song cycle for me eventually of poetry that I've written, which isn't a very original idea. A lot of people have done that, including a lot of my singing friends. But I think that would be really fun to do sometime.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting that it just sort of comes in waves, because I think that's a very common experience.
Yeah.
I've spoken to some other like songwriters and creators, and it seems to sort of come in waves,
Mhm.
you know. Um, and like, do you find yourself like, are there times where you wish you were creating, or like writing new poetry, or anything like that? Like,
Yeah, I think so. I think instead of wishing that I were constantly creative in my writing, I think it's more wishing that I was constantly feeling creative in my singing. Like sometimes, especially in academia, like I'm learning music to get a credit in a course. And sometimes I just feel like I'm going through the motions. I'm trying to make sure everything is technically sound. Um, I'm really focused on my like vocal development and the development of my instrument that I just feel like there's these moments where I'm like, oh, I hate what I'm singing. Like I don't connect with this, and I just wish I could always, no matter what, um,
mm,
just feel that like creativity and connection. And that is a constant struggle for artists, I think, in all disciplines. So
yeah.
like, it sounds like I'm sort of being hard on myself, but that's something that everyone goes through. So um, just like constant authenticity and like connection to what you're doing is kind of the goal, I think.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you find that in something that you don't connect to?
Um, it can be like really challenging. but I think just always coming back down to the text, um, and just trying to just trying to I think the best word is authenticity. Like, if I'm hating something that I'm singing, like just trying to find ways that it connects to me, um, and like my own life. And it's a really good exercise to actually step outside of the technical like bubble for a minute, um, in my mind and in my practice, and just say like, who cares? Like whatever's gonna come out of me right now is gonna come out. Like just feel instead of think. So it's always good, to do that kind of thing, um, and just try and connect any way you can.
Yeah, yeah. So what drives you to create then?
Uh, I I think what drives me the most is that I have this like never-ending impetus to learn, and I feel like I constantly feel like I don't know enough, and I want to be as knowledgeable as possible. I want to go as far as I can. I want to be better than I am. Um, and I just feel like I'm not there yet.
Mm,
And I just want to get there. And like recordings have a lot to do with this, I think. Just recordings are amazing. And I love that we live in the 21st century, but there's so much of that, like, you're not Maria Callas and you're not, Joyce DiDonato. And it's like, I know it can be, it's good, it's a good drive, like it's a good motivating factor to hear these people and feel their artistry and be like, I'm on the path, I can do that.
mm.
So for me it's just, um I just want to have the kind of voice that speaks to people the way that they have that kind of voice.
Yeah, yeah. I've heard from other artists too that like I can't remember who was saying this, but it's like you should always look back on something that you made in the past
Mm.
and like kind of cringe a little bit,
Yes.
because that means that you're getting better.
Yeah, I have those moments. I have many of those moments.
Yeah.
Oh, I think back on my time at Brock so much, and I'm so grateful for it. Like, I cannot believe that the faculty at Brock took a chance on me, because, like, going into Brock was, um, insane, actually, because I was just kind of like this kid fresh out of high school, never did anything other than music, wasn't good at anything else but music, and I was singing in the church and singing in choirs, and I just thought like, I all I know is that I want to do music. And I had taken piano lessons my whole life, and I never ever took a voice lesson before university. So at the time of like applying to Brock, I was like, um, what am I going to do, piano or voice? Because I'd been singing my whole life, but playing piano in front of people terrifies me. I don't know what that's about. I've been doing it my whole life, not sure what that's about. So I decided I'd do voice, and just did no research on what the program at Brock was actually like. I thought they were going to make me Hilary Duff. I wanted to be a pop singer. Like, someone came to me saying, these are the songs you have to learn for the audition. And I looked at them. I was like, these aren't English songs. This is Italian. I was like, I don't know how to do this. But somehow I did it. And somehow the beautiful people at Brock said, there's something there. So let's work with you. And thinking back on that time, particularly singing the song Vittoria Mio Core by someone that I forget, but it's in the 24 Italian Songs and Arias book. I remember performing that in the Sean O'Sullivan Theater and
Mm.
thinking that I sound like such a pop singer singing this
Huh.
song. And I look back at that and just absolutely cringe, but at the same time it like fills my heart and soul that like I'm not like that anymore, and like hopefully, and just the many wonderful people I've met along the way who have encouraged me and taught me so much, that I'm grateful for, like, the progress I've made in this time. But yeah, I cringe often thinking of my performance.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can tell you from sort of um, being on the sidelines, sort of watching your development, that that you have progressed like leaps and bounds. You know, hearing your voice at your master's recital. I mean, I haven't heard you sing in a few years, so I can only imagine what you sound like now. But just hearing that progression is incredible, and you know, and you are always improving. Um, and but yeah, it's one of those things where like you kind of, you know, you look at someone, or you look at a project, or whatever it is, and you think like, man, like how can this get better?
Yeah,
And then it does,
yeah,
and you're like, wow, like I don't know how this could get better again, and then it gets better again, you know. And that's sort of how I've seen your sort of progression in the way that you've been studying voice. And it's so it's so amazing to see someone that I've known and have heard for, I don't even want to guess how many years.
yeah.
Yeah. um you know, hear that development, and it's yeah, it's there's a sense of pride because you're a friend, but also it's really encouraging to see somebody that I know sort of grow like that.
Aw, well, thank you for saying that. And I feel the same about you.
Oh,
It's
thanks.
incredible.
Yeah. Um, um, Shoot, I had a question. Give me a sec. It'll come back to me.
No worries.
Um, oh yeah. Um, yeah. So to speak to sort of my experience, it's funny that you bring up the whole like pop scene going into Brock, because I was the same way. You know, I found this. I was very much a pop rock guitar player, and then you know, decided that okay, I need to do music. Um, so I, you know, but I didn't want to move away, and found a really incredible teacher, and like a guitar instructor, and decided to go the classical route, because that was just kind of what you were, you know, what we were kind of forced into. That's just what the option was that we had.
Yeah.
um so what would you say to someone who's thinking about uh pursuing music, or any sort of, you know, arts thing, like they're sort of they're expressing an interest in, or noticing an interest in themselves,
Yeah.
in the arts. What would you say to someone?
I would say to try everything. Like, if you're a singer, try to sing all the genres. Like, I think kids today, and especially I think was the case for us, like we didn't grow up with a love of classical music or opera, and upon discovering it, we found a talent there or a love there. Um, and I just think that there's so much to learn from the classical genre about technique, um, and like about the world really, since like art influences art. um, like I In studying classical music and opera, I find that I know so much more about Europe, about history, about European politics, about poetry and visual art, and the artists who were like visual artists, even who were prominent at the times, different time periods and eras. Like, there's so much to learn from the genre of classical music. So, a lot of kids just like, think it's bizarre and uncomfortable. But I think you're just like so richly cultured if you study this music. But that's the same to say about pop or about like R&B or whatever. Like there's a genre that there's something to learn from every genre. So I would say be as open-minded as possible. And if you're not going to tackle those things yourself, be open to listening to this music, or like go watch an opera. Like just be open to it because you just never know what your niche is going to be. I never ever ever thought I'd be where I am right now in like even 6 7 years ago. So
Mm.
it's funny. It's funny what you're influenced by if you're just open to doing it.
Right, right, yeah, yeah. No, that's really, really incredibly important.
Yeah.
Um, what? Why is what you do important?
I think that in a simple way, like my doctor, if I'm going to my doctoral thesis, um, I think I'm trying to contribute to the Canadian opera scene, which is, I think, very undervalued. I think it's underrepresented in the literature. Um, a lot of people don't know about Canadian composers of opera, and a lot of people can't name a Canadian opera. They don't know the music. Um, we have all sorts of wonderful aria anthologies, like G. Schirmer books, where we have all sorts of important arias that, as a singer, they've been deemed important to your development and you're supposed to learn them. Um, but none of them are Canadian and none of them are new music. And I just think that this is a this is a time this is the music of our time. And
Mm.
at a time when like opera companies are pushing for more diversity on the stage. Actually, I think the performers are pushing for more diversity on the stage, and um, that translates into maybe not doing the Marriage of Figaro every single year on every single important stage. Like people want to see representation. People want to hear the music of Black composers, women composers, composers of other cultures on the stage, and um, there's this push from the artists, and we're really putting pressure on opera companies. So I think the more um, we can promote the new music that's coming out and the music of minorities, um, the richer we will be for it. And it's just important. We're starting to look ahead now, and we don't want to hear the Mozart over and over again anymore.
Yeah, yeah. Do you think that's reflected in audiences?
Uh, well, unfortunately, I personally I don't think that's reflected in audiences so much. Um, well, audiences are diverse, and I think that we have a lot of the older generation that wants to hear the Mozart. They want to hear the Verdi. Um, they want to hear the great divas sing that great music, and that's amazing. Like that is music that is groundbreaking and absolutely amazing music. But on the other hand, there's a lot of students like me and you who go to the opera, and um, like we just want to see something different. Um, so I do think that audiences are growing a little bit more diverse. And especially there's a lot of opera companies offering like 30 under 30 tickets. Like if you're under 30, you get a discounted price to go to the opera. So there's these incentives to bring young people to the audiences that I think a lot of people don't know about. So once the houses open up, I hope everyone under 30 go see an opera and see if there's a special price for you. Um, uh, but yeah, so I think while we still have like a lot of the boomers and the older generation around, there's sort of that maintaining of the status quo. We need to appease to people who want to see the classics that bring in the money. But I do think that there's a growing audience who wants to see something more diverse.
Yeah, Um, I don't know how much like history that you've studied, like cultural music history or anything like that. So I don't know if this is a question that you'll be able to field. But um, do you know if this is something that has has existed in in the past, like looking 200-300 years ago? Was it like the modern music that was happening then?
Hmm.
People weren't going to hear it, or people wanted to hear music from the previous century.
Right.
um do you know if that's been around?
Um, I don't really know the specifics of that, but all I can really speak to is the fact that like there were certainly trends. Um, like I'm thinking Europe right now, and I think Europe has just always been big on opera, even today. Kids like I say kids like our age, but like people our age want to go to an opera. Like you'll get young people at the Berlin Staatsoper. I can't say it in German. Staatsoper. But like young people just want to see it. It's such a strong tradition in Europe. Um, but definitely like there were uh, some areas of Europe where like it just wasn't as strong. Like no one wanted to hear um, Handel before he went to Italy in like the early 18th century, and like knew like figured out how to write a melody from the Italians. um, and like British opera, English opera was not big between like Purcell and then Britain, like in the late 20th century. Sorry,
Hmm.
no, 19th century. um, so I think there were just trends that have always existed. But I can't speak too much about um, whether or not they were really looking back that far at the time.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I just wonder if that's sort of always been around, if because I remember going and listening to he's a classical guitarist and classical composer, Leo Brower. I went and heard him speak in Buffalo, and he was talking about the importance of new music,
Mhm.
and how, and from like an administrative perspective, where arts administrations, the people who are booking these these shows need to start booking new music, and challenging what their audiences are listening to, right? But I, I sort of I have that administrative brain where it's like, well, sure, that sounds great. I would love to offer some new music, but at the same time, if we want to continue to exist as an organization, we kind of need to cater to what people are going to see,
Of course, that
right?
doesn't put us in the seats. The new music.
Yeah, yeah. So there's that struggle, because you want to, I mean, you want the artists and composers to be heard, and I think that struggle could possibly be one that's existed for a while. But hopefully, with the um with people being more open to having much better representation in the arts, even just over the last year or two, um hopefully we get those audiences more willing to kind of broaden their perspective.
Yeah,
you know
yeah, I hope so too.
yeah, and it sounds like you're leading that too.
Oh, well, I certainly feel like I'm along for the ride, um, because there are many organizations that are just trying to make it more accessible. And I'm speaking now sort of more towards like new opera. There's a lot of this, um, like let's do a chamber opera performance that's only maybe 20 minutes long. Let's promote this thing that's in English and try and get rid of the language barrier.
Mm.
So there's a lot of companies out there, and even in Canada, small companies too, that are really trying to cater to an audience that maybe doesn't have the stamina for a whole
Mm.
experience.
Hmm.
Um, so, but I do think that they're doing great work, and it needs to people need to go see them.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
It's more fun than people think, is what I'd say.
Yeah. So what about you? What projects do you have coming up?
So yeah, speaking of small opera companies, my very good friends Mabel Wanacott and Elle Gagne, with Brian Cho, the collaborative pianist, they have started a collective in London called a Can of Soup Opera Collective, I think, and they're putting on what I think, from what I understand right now, it's a very new idea that they're doing. But they're putting on like little chamber operas. And the project that I have coming up with them is going to be sometime in the fall. Um, they're putting on Monica Pierce's Aunt Helen, which is a 10-minute opera for solo voice and piano. But what they're doing is puppeteering. So Mabel is making puppets and going to be puppeting, puppeting, puppeteering. I don't know. And I will be somewhere off stage singing. So
Very cool.
yeah, so that's they're sort of multi medium in their collective, but that's what I have coming up in the fall so far. Um, and then I have another collaboration with Magaria Halim. She's also a fellow doctoral candidate in the program. We did our master's together as well. But we will be doing a Lachenmann set for voice and piano, which is insane. I've glossed over the score once, and a a single tear may have fallen. But it looks like I'm going to be losing a lot of sleep over that, but it's all worth it. All this new
Yeah.
music that's crazy and weird is just like it energizes me, and it's just so fun to do. So that's what I've got going on so far.
Great.
More things.
Great. Well, I can't wait for live music to come back, and we'll have all of this great stuff to go check out. So thanks for chatting with me today, Andrea.
Yeah, thanks so much, Brody. It's been so much fun and good to see you.
All right, good to see you too. We'll talk to you later.
Okay.